The world tilted. It was as if the very axis of my existence had shifted, throwing everything I knew into chaos. The sky, once a comforting blue, now seemed to spin out of control, mirroring the turmoil inside me. The ground, solid just moments before, turned to quicksand. Every step I took felt uncertain, as if the earth itself was betraying me. The cracks in the ground were like the cracks in my heart, widening with every passing second. Her voice, laced with an unfamiliar pain, echoed in my ear. It was a sound I had never heard from her before, a raw and unfiltered agony that cut through me like a knife. Each word she spoke was a dagger, piercing deeper into my soul. "He promised me forever," she sobbed. "He said you were just a friend." Her words were a revelation, a truth I had been blind to. The betrayal was not just his, but mine as well, for believing in a facade. My breath hitched. Just a friend? The words echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder of my naivety. How could I have been so blind, so trusting? The shock was overwhelming, a tidal wave of disbelief crashing over me. My mind, trained to believe his every word, struggled to process the impossible. The reality of his betrayal was a puzzle I couldn't piece together. Every memory, every moment we shared now felt tainted, a lie I had willingly lived. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I shook my head, trying to dispel the nightmare that had become my reality. The reflection in the mirror was a stranger, a woman who had lost everything in the blink of an eye. Not to me. He was my world, my sun and moon. Every plan, every dream revolved around him. The love we shared was supposed to be unbreakable, a bond that nothing could sever. But now it felt like a cruel illusion. We were building a life together, a tapestry woven with shared dreams and whispered promises. Each thread represented a moment, a memory, a promise of a future that now seemed impossible. The plans we made, the future we envisioned, all felt like a distant dream. His infidelity, a cruel joke I refused to believe. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, a reality I couldn't accept. The man I loved, the man I trusted, had shattered my world with his lies. Except the raw anguish in her voice, the mirroring of my own pain, resonated with a terrible truth. Her tears were my tears, her pain was my pain. We were both victims of his deceit, both caught in the web of his lies. His lies, a suffocating blanket, threatened to smother me. The weight of his betrayal was crushing, a burden I couldn't bear. I felt trapped, suffocated by the reality of his infidelity, struggling to find a way out of the darkness. He denied it, of course, with a fervor that could convince even the most skeptical observer. He denied every accusation thrown his way. His voice, steady and unwavering, painted a picture of innocence so vivid that it was almost impossible to see through the facade. Words, dripping with practiced sincerity, flowed from him like honey, each sentence meticulously crafted to disarm and deceive. He spoke of misunderstandings, of miscommunications, and of a world that seemed to conspire against him. He spun a tale of a delusional admirer, a desperate attempt to tarnish our love. His narrative was so compelling, so intricately woven, that it was hard not to get lost in it. He described this admirer as someone who was envious of what we had, someone who would stop at nothing to see us fall apart. Part of me, the part clinging to the familiar comfort of his love, wanted to believe him, needed to believe him. It was easier to accept his version of the truth than to confront the possibility that everything I knew was a lie. The comfort of his embrace, the warmth of his words, they were all I had ever known. But doubt, a venomous seed, had been planted. It started as a whisper, a faint echo in the back of my mind, but it grew louder with each passing day. The inconsistencies in his stories, the little details that didn't quite add up, they all began to gnaw at me. His eyes, once windows to his soul, now seemed like clouded mirrors, reflecting back a stranger. The warmth that once resided there was replaced by a cold, distant gaze. It was as if the man I loved had been replaced by an imposter, someone who wore his face but lacked his essence. The man I loved, the one who held me at night and promised me forever, wouldn't hurt me like this. Or so I wanted to believe. His touch, once a source of comfort, now felt foreign and unfamiliar. The promises he made, once a beacon of hope, now seemed like empty words. Would he? This question, a sharp shard of glass, lodged itself in my heart. It was a question that haunted me, that kept me awake at night. The man I thought I knew, the man I had given my heart to, was he capable of such deceit? The answer, elusive and painful, was something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The evidence, like insidious vines, began to choke the life out of my blissful ignorance. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, with small things that seemed insignificant at first. But as the days turned into weeks, these small things grew, wrapping around my heart and mind, suffocating the trust and love that once flourished so freely. I tried to ignore it, to push it aside, but the truth has a way of making itself known, no matter how deeply you try to bury it. A stray text message left open on his laptop, a message that wasn't meant for me. It was a small thing, just a few words, but it spoke volumes. It was a crack in the facade, a glimpse into a world I was never meant to see. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read it, my mind racing with questions and doubts. A forgotten scarf tucked away in his glove compartment, a scarf that didn't belong to me. It was a tangible piece of evidence, something I could hold in my hands. It smelled of a perfume I didn't recognize, a scent that lingered in the air long after I had put it back. It was another crack, another piece of the puzzle that was slowly coming together. The faint scent of her perfume clinging to his shirt, each discovery chipped away at the foundation of our love. It was as if the very essence of our relationship was being eroded, bit by bit. The scent was a constant reminder of the betrayal, a ghost that haunted me day and night. The world, once vibrant and full of promise, turned gray. Colors faded, and everything seemed dull and lifeless. The joy and excitement that once filled my days were replaced with a heavy sense of dread and sorrow. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over my life, blocking out the sun and casting everything in shadow. Food lost its flavor, laughter died in my throat. The simple pleasures that once brought me so much happiness now felt hollow and meaningless. I found myself going through the motions, pretending to be okay, but inside I was falling apart. Every meal was a struggle, every laugh a painful reminder of what I had lost. Sleep, once a sanctuary, became a battlefield of nightmares. My dreams were filled with images of betrayal and heartbreak, scenes that played out over and over again in my mind. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, unable to shake the feeling of dread that clung to me. The nights were long and restless, and the days were filled with exhaustion and despair. His lies, woven into the very fabric of our relationship, unraveled with each passing day. The trust that once bound us together was fraying at the edges, coming apart thread by thread. Every lie he told, every secret he kept, was another tear in the fabric, another step towards the inevitable end. I could see it happening, but I felt powerless to stop it. My heart, once overflowing with love, began to harden. The pain and betrayal had turned it to stone, a cold and unfeeling thing. I could no longer find it in myself to forgive, to trust, to love. The cracks in his facade had become cracks in my own heart, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The truth, when it finally unfurled in all its ugliness, was far more devastating than I could have imagined. It wasn't just an affair, a fleeting moment of weakness. He had crafted an entire other life, a parallel existence where I didn't exist. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The future we had planned, the dreams we had dared to dream together, crumbled into dust. He hadn't just betrayed our love, he had desecrated it, trampled it underfoot with his deceit. Learning about his trans girlfriend, understanding her story, added another layer of complexity to the pain. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her too, about the love and acceptance she sought, the vulnerability she had offered to a man who was incapable of reciprocating it honestly. My anger towards him intensified, fueled by a sense of injustice, not just for myself but for her as well. He had used her, manipulated her just as he had manipulated me. He had taken advantage of her vulnerability, her desire to be loved for who she truly was. I looked in the mirror, searching for the woman I used to be, the woman who had loved him blindly, who had believed in the fairy tale he had so expertly crafted. She was gone, replaced by someone hollowed out by betrayal. The pain was raw, a gaping wound in my soul. But even in the midst of the wreckage, a flicker of defiance ignited within me. I would not let his betrayal define me. I would not allow him to break me. The days that followed were a blur of tears and anger, of questioning everything I thought I knew about love and trust. But slowly, painstakingly, I began to piece myself back together. I leaned on my friends, their unwavering support a lifeline in the storm. I allowed myself to grieve, to rage, to feel the full weight of my emotions. And in the depths of my despair, I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. The future, once a tapestry woven with his threads, now lay before me, a blank canvas. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The pain of his betrayal still lingered, a dull ache in my chest, but it no longer held me captive. I had survived the unimaginable. I had stared into the abyss of his deceit and emerged broken but not destroyed. I was ready to embrace the unknown, to write my own story, to define my own happily ever after. His betrayal had been a crucible, a trial by fire. It had burned away the naivete, the illusions, the carefully constructed walls around my heart. But it had also forged something new within me: resilience, self-love, and an unwavering belief in my own worth. I had loved and lost, but I had also learned. I had learned the importance of trusting my instincts, of setting boundaries, of never settling for anything less than I deserved. My heart, though scarred, was not broken. It was open, ready to love again, this time with wisdom and courage.